Are you all set? Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you? Donna, how are you? Nice to see you all. Glad you're here. I wish we had more, but we're glad you're here. The purpose of this, how many of you were at town meeting? You guys were, okay. So you have not seen, you saw the video, but you folks have not seen the video. We have it hooked up. We've had problems with it. We're going to hope it works. We get one shot at it, and then Donna will turn it over to you so you can figure out how to do it. But we're going to try. But before we do that, let me just give you a little bit of background about really what we're trying to do here, what this is all about. As you drive around town, you can see we have vacant buildings, a couple over here, a couple over there. We have dead-end streets. If you drive down Walgreens, it goes to a parking lot. There's no through traffic. There's no ability to connect through all of that traffic. And what we've been trying to do is work together with both the landowners, people that own the property in the area, because if you build a plan and you don't involve the people that own the property and you come up with a plan and they don't like it, it's a pretty worthless plan. So you need to involve the property owners, you need to involve business people in the community, you need to involve people from the planning board and other boards and citizens, and we put a group together. We call it the Downtown Development Committee, for lack of another term. I'm not even sure where we got that name, but that's what we called it. And the whole theory being is that we're going to try and come up with an agreement as to what if this town center were to be built to its full capacity, which it probably never will be. If it were to be built to its full capacity, what would it look like? What would it develop for the town in revenue? How would the citizens feel about it? You know, basically, what would the town of Norfolk look like if you built that strategic plan? One of the reasons you do something like this is that as we do different things within the community, if you don't have a master vision as to what your town center is going to look like and you start doing pieces, you're going to end up with a discombobulated mess, so to speak. It becomes very disjointed and you make a lot of mistakes. So our hope was to come up with a plan that we could get some consensus around that said, this is ultimately what it could be, but we fully recognize that it probably never will be that, but pieces of it can happen. If you were to, and we're going to talk a lot about revenue tonight because we are a town that is 95% residential tax base. So 95% of our revenue comes from residents, personal family homes. We're 5% commercial. We're never going to be a huge commercial community. We don't have 495, we don't have Route 1, we don't have an area that really can develop. We have what we call our B1 district, which is downtown. We have an area over in Southwood, which has its own issues, as many of you probably know. And we have the 1A corridor. Those are really our commercial opportunities. And so when we look at those, we want to look at them in a vein of what could happen if we were to develop these areas and what type of revenue would it generate. And what perhaps the most important question is what do people really want to see? So our strategy, we know we're not going to bring in major businesses into this community. It's just not going to happen, and I'm not sure we really all want that. But we can develop opportunities for people to create small businesses, wine and cheese shops. We've had inquiries from chiropractors, people of this nature, with just small business practices. But to do that, you have to create some residential density around the community. We started with the Borelli complex up here. I think there are, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, planning boards here, 66 units up there, I think, at build-out, is that right? Somebody, Peter, do you use it 66 units on Borelli build-out?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was carrying...
We'll take a guess. We think it's around 66 units. Close enough.
What, Borelli's?
Yeah, that's 66
24
units.
plus 20, which was 20 turned back.
So that would be 64. I was off by 2. They fit very well within the community. They don't strain our infrastructure. We have, you'll see as we go through this video, hopefully it'll work, you'll see areas where we could also develop some additional residential density, such as down by the old town hall. And there's some property over here in back of Frank Gross's house on the other side of the tracks that could be developed. Again, 35, 40, 45 units. That begins to create some residential flow to attract businesses. If you look at the area up here past Walgreens, that's a dead-end road. Goes nowhere. No traffic. No one, unless you go into the parking lot, no one drives down that road. So you've heard us talk about a bridge. And the bridge that we're talking about is a bridge that comes from Boardman Street, directly across from Boardman Street. The bridge is over the MBTA tracks and connects to that road that is up by Walgreens. That would allow a traffic flow. It would make all of that property commercially viable. It would make that store that's been vacant forever viable, because now people are going by it. People don't go down a dead-end road unless they're parking their car. There's no traffic that goes down there, so it's not viable for a commercial industry. So that's the point of what we were trying to do, is to create that opportunity. And if you have a question, this is very informal, feel free. Sure.
The thing that sticks out to me, and I've been thinking about this since I saw that, and I read the article in the Boomerang. Right now, there's a road that leads from the library to past Walgreens, to the MBTA lot. Okay? Is the proposal to build a bridge from the MBTA lot to Boardman Street?
Yes.
Is that the proposal?
Yes.
Okay. Because I'm thinking, right now, the people who go to that MBTA lot, they have to drive by Walgreens, they have to drive by the 2 stores that have been vacant since they've been built, they have to drive by the mall where Linda's Variety is. If there's a bridge put in there, and we were thinking, you would think that the people coming from Franklin are going to take that bridge into the MBTA lot. Is that correct? Is that what you're looking at?
It's not illogical, but we haven't worked out any traffic patterns or anything at this point.
So anybody using the MBTA lot and leaving town to the south of town, they're not going to pass any of those stores. That's going to take away business.
Unless it's one way coming this direction.
Well, again,
Then they have to.
but it's in the morning. They're going to have to go there in the morning. How many people are going to shop at any of those businesses first thing in the morning? They're going to do their shopping when they're leaving at night. They'll pass Walgreens, they pass the pizza place, whatever, all along the mall. To me, I'm questioning why then there's a need to have a bridge like that. Why? Why there?
I think we can answer it for you as we go through it. That's a good question. I think that as we go through this, you'll get your answer.
Okay.
If you don't, bring it back.
I'll ask
Okay?
again.
Any other questions up right before we get into this? We're going to play this video again that you saw in town meeting, I hope. I hope it works. We'll keep our fingers crossed. If not, we'll, Donna, we're going to call her out. Let's taste the play. Here, Donna, you want to do this? Very direction. Okay, I'll get it in the paper. Waking up. All right. Our video is waking up.
It is, it's waking up.
I'm going to talk a little bit through this, just to point some things out to you. And again, this is a vision of what that build-out would look like. This is taken from the water tower. You were talking about the bridge. That's where the Boardman Street Bridge is right now, where hypothetically would be, just as you said, by the MBTA parking lot. But the road would go further up. That's the road that would go up to the Borelli complex. The bridge would then go directly over towards Boardman Street. All of that land now becomes commercially developable. This is the area that's directly across from Walgreens that many of you that are old timers remember as the moonscape. That's hypothetically what it might look like if it were developed. That's seen from 2 different sides. It's one building seen from 2. These buildings are just examples, by the way. We were just trying to come up with some models as to what it would look like. This is the area that's currently owned by Stop and Shop for a grocery store. It is currently approved for that. Hypothetically, if it were there, this is what it would look like.
Where is that?
That is, sorry. Oh. These are the residential areas. These are similar to the Morelli complex up on the condos up on the hill. There are 3 locations. One is over in back of the railroad tracks, the one you're seeing there. The other 2 are down by the old town hall. I think you all know this particular location, and our hopes are someday that we can revitalize that. And this is just summing it up in the different areas. We would, the MBTA station would be relocated. We've talked with the MBTA about this, moving it away from where it currently is, over and back of the area along Liberty Lane, so that it gets away from the crossing of Rockwood Road and we don't have the stoppage that we have now every time a train comes in.
What is that straight ahead?
That's another hypothetical building that would be built on the area by Boardman Street and Main Street. These are all potential locations that could be developed if we had the correct flow and infrastructure in place to make it happen. Some of the things we currently have in place, some we do not. Donna, you're a wizard. Thank you. That's traffic at normal speed around the roundabout.
People getting cut off.
This video was made by a Norfolk resident.
It was. This was made by a Norfolk resident, Niels Norgren, who volunteered his time and talent. He does this for a living, professionally. Just did incredible work in an incredibly short period of time. So we're very, very grateful to him for that. I don't know, Donna, can we play it again and stop it? Is that possible? It is possible. Okay. We're going to just stop it in a few places, and Walter, where are you? You want to join me on this? We'll talk through a couple of these spots. Walter is on our Economic Development Committee, as is Bob Nicodemus, and who else is here from that? Oh, and
Lori's here.
Yep. Lori's here. These folks have worked very hard in trying to develop business opportunities in the town of Norfolk.
How will I know when to stop?
I'll yell at you very quietly.
I still don't get where that bridge is. Can you stop
Okay.
here?
Stop right there for a second. Okay. This is the road you were talking about, sir. That road would continue on up to the top of the hill and connect up to the Morelli complex. The road you see there, Liberty Lane, would connect down on the bottom. I wish I had a marker, but the Liberty Lane, this is Liberty Lane right here. And that would connect right on down into...
What's the white building? That's what I'm confused at. Is that a new
These
building?
are this building in the foreground and the back. These are the Morelli. These are the condos up on the hill. These pictures were taken from the water tower.
Oh, okay,
These pictures were taken from the water tower, which is up on the hill.
okay.
Niels is apparently not afraid of heights. He actually climbed up there and took these pictures. I would never do that.
Part of the answer to the gentleman's question also is that you saw in the video the opportunity to bring some more commercial development to the other side of that blue road. So there would be some additional stores potentially up there that would be available to those folks.
Is that a footbridge or a street bridge? A bridge?
It's a
Street
street
bridge.
bridge similar
Street
to the construction of the Park Street Bridge.
Okay.
Similar to that.
But that's not Boardman Street, right?
Boardman Street is, continue on down.
Okay. Thanks.
Let's see if we can give you a better view of it. This is the MBTA parking lot right now. That's the street that would go straight over to, you know where the building is at the corner of Boardman and Main Street?
The empty building?
Straight across. If that road were extended
Oh,
straight across,
cool.
you would come to
Okay.
the MBTA tracks.
All right,
The
okay,
bridge would be
yes.
going over the
Okay,
MBTA
okay.
tracks.
Great.
Okay.
That looks great.
Now this is the area where, as I said, we used to call that the moonscape
Yeah.
for years, and it's right over here. Where are we? Right over here, right back in the library. Very desirable commercial property, but again, there's no traffic, there's no flow. Jim?
Jimmy, you might want to mention the potential for residential. above
Right.
the roads.
Right, we have some zoning in town that allows, and actually John Middleton probably can talk better. John, why don't you could talk better to that than I can. The residential above commercial.
Okay.
currently we have a mixed zoning, B1 district, which means each level of retail or office space will have apartments or condominiums above it. And right now, zoning allows for one level of condominiums above each retail building. We were thinking of the idea of changing that and making it 2 levels to get more residential units in the center of town.
Hold it there, Donna. If you look right there, go back, Donna, if you can.
Yes, okay.
Can you do that?
What?
Right there. Go forward a little bit.
Take it.
There.
Stop.
Now, that's an example of commercial on the first floor and residential on the upper floor. It could be office space as well.
That area there is impossible to park and go in and back out onto busy Main
Good point.
We know.
115. And my theory is that partly because the rent's high, but that's why they're empty, because who wants to, you can't go in there and then back out. You put residential housing
There are
up there.
other reasons why it's empty.
Where are you gonna park?
Yeah, there are other reasons why it's empty. It's not the parking.
But not, my point is, who's gonna wanna live up there? Where are they gonna park?
There are a lot of issues around all of the buildings that we're talking about, and parking clearly is one of them. But let me just continue for 1 second.
Okay.
That is an example of potentially residential on the top floor, commercial on the bottom floor, and that is depicted in all of the buildings that you
I
see
understand.
structured throughout the center of town.
I think you just made a comment that there's other reasons why those,
There are other reasons why.
do we know why?
We do know why.
Can you tell us?
Why?
The building is not well maintained. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, does it have anything to do with rents? Is the rent too high, is it?
I think it's more that the building is just not well maintained.
Because those 2 storefronts have been vacant, I've been here 15 years.
I know.
They've been vacant more than they've been occupied.
Right.
Well, there used to be a pharmacy there.
Right.
Many years
Oh,
ago.
I know,
before.
many years ago,
But
they've been vacant ever since I've been here.
is
But-
there, so if you say that the building's not well maintained, okay, if that's a reason, then how are you going to get the landlord to improve the property to the point where something like this could be built?
There are a lot of issues around it. One is septic, for example, which is one of the issues associated with this piece of property. We have sewage treatment plant capability up here at the condos that is only being used at half capacity. So there are a lot of infrastructure considerations for this to all happen that we have to deal with, and we're going to talk about that. This can't just happen overnight.
Right.
There are a lot of things that have to occur before these things can happen. Some of them may never happen. That building may never get revitalized. We don't own it. You know, if the owner chooses not to do it, it'll sit.
That's really
We
a question that I have, yeah.
We understand this is a vision of what it could be. It is by no means what it will be, necessarily.
Could the town buy it from them, or?
I don't know why we would do that.
Yeah, I know. Desperation?
I wouldn't vote for it.
No, I hear you.
Democratic process.
Yeah.
A collection.
Pardon?
You can take up a collection.
We could take a collection. I know that, well, no point in getting
Yeah,
into
yeah,
it, it doesn't mean anything. Yes, Jim?
Just the fact that we could maybe here or in some of the other ones we looked at, put residential above some of the storefronts. That's a positive for the state in awarding the grant for bridges, and not.
We haven't talked about the grant yet, but yes. This bridge that we talked about, we're not anticipating putting this on the back of the taxpayers. We're looking for state money to do that. And we've been actively engaged. Representative Winslow and Senator Ross have been very, very helpful to us. In fact, literally, it's kind of every day we learn something a little bit new. But we have been put on the priority list by the state to get funding to build that bridge. We've been trying to do this for how long, guys? 10 years? 9? Okay, close to 10. For 9 years, we've been trying to build this bridge, trying to get funding for it. We're closer now than we've ever been. But it's not something we're looking at asking the town to support. We're looking for state funding. Donna?
And I would just ask when we get to the train
Sure.
station, if we
Yeah.
get stops, I would be sort of
There you
okay
go.
right there.
Good timing.
So
Keep going,
where
Donna.
exactly are you moving the train
That's the
station?
view, she's gonna ask.
Again, this is what it could be.
But where is the actual train station?
The train station right now is,
I know where it is, I
okay.
walked through it.
This would be further up where the stairway is now,
Yeah.
along Liberty Lane.
Maybe I just never walked, where's, okay.
Liberty Lane parallels the tracks.
Yes.
So right up here then?
Towards the,
That way.
towards the staircase, which goes to the upper lot.
You know where the staircase is over there?
Yeah, no,
Right
I
there.
do know that.
That hypothetically is where the station would go.
That would get rid of Rockwood traffic how? Just
If
like
the train would no longer stop at that spot.
So they could.
So you would have the gate would have to go down while it passes, but you wouldn't have the delay while it picks up passengers.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yes, sir.
I read something on the Norfolk net, that Franklin has a similar situation with the train stopping so close to a crossing. And the solution that the poster mentioned
I read that.
was that there's a switch. You flip a switch and the gates go up until the train is ready to go through, or the switch is pulled to drop the gates, and you don't have to do any reconfiguration. Has that been considered? Is that something that
I
can
don't
be
even,
done?
if somebody in here knows I read that posting, but
Yeah.
I learned that I believe about 10% of what I read on Norfolk Net was all due
Right.
respect to-
I understand that. I understand that, but it seems to me that the MBTA being in the financial difficulties that it is now, it might be a little stretch to think that they would be willing to relocate
Again,
a station.
this is a what could be.
Yeah.
This is nothing more than what could be. That may never happen. We're not suggesting to you that everything you're seeing in this video will take place.
Frankly, I hope they do.
Whether
we do the rest of it or not.
What this video depicts, please listen carefully to this because it's a distinction. This is if everything fell into place. Everybody did what we'd like. What would the town look like if it all got built out? That's what this depicts. It'll probably never happen. But you have to build that plan to come up with some strategy so that if we do get the bridge, what is the next step? What do we do next so that we don't make this a mess, that we don't just put things in different places without understanding how they fit together? And you need infrastructure. You need stormwater drainage. You need gas, which now comes up to the center of town. You know, restaurants want gas. They don't want electricity. They want gas. And propane's very expensive. Nobody cooks with propane professionally. So all of that has to get into place. Some of it's in place now, some of it's not. It's all part of a long-term strategy, but you have to have a plan.
So the point of the bridge is to relocate the commuter rail station?
Now, the point of the bridge is to create traffic flow and open up the commercial area that's over there now that is,
Yeah.
no one's there.
Yeah.
There's no road to it. There's no ability to develop it.
I know.
They
Yes.
can take my 25% and move the platform.
Say that again?
They can take my big 25% extra I'm paying them and move the platform.
Okay.
That'll do it.
Free up some land, free up some traffic on Rockwood.
Well, you folks are down there, so you know very well the
Yeah.
mess that it can make.
Yeah.
Okay, Donna, keep it going, thanks. So again, this is what it looks like today.
Yeah.
Well, there's exactly what it looks like today. Nothing is there. This is what we've had problems with all day on this. Okay, you can turn the lights on. So let's talk more specifically about your thoughts on it. This map is really small enough to see this. This is our downtown center as it is today. This is Main Street, right through here. This is Boardman Street. There's a hypothetical bridge going across the MBTA parking lot. Oh, I'm blocking you, I'm sorry. A hypothetical bridge. We would connect all the way up here to where the Borelli complex is now. This is Liberty Lane. Here we are, sitting in the library. This is the Moonscape area over here. All of this is what you see here today. And these are the areas that we were hoping at some point we could develop. In terms of residential area, this area that you see marked in red is potential for residential development. This area down in here is potential for residential development.
But the other houses along Main Street,
Which
waiting on Main Street, next to
This
the.
house here, this is Frank Gross's house here. Oh, Main Street, sorry. Which homes?
Near the potential residential development.
Down here?
Other way,
Down
yeah.
here?
Yeah. And what is the plan there?
Well, this lot is for sale.
I
It
know.
has been for some time.
So,
Yeah, this lot, you're
This
talking about
Where's
this
the
lot.
old town hall?
The old town hall's here.
Okay.
Oh, so it's before the old town?
Yeah.
hall?
Yes, it's before. It's currently owned, and I believe there is a tentative plan
I think
already in
there
place
is.
for that.
Is that near the pond, that little pond right there?
Yeah, there's two. The pond is here.
Okay, so it's right after that pond.
Yeah.
so is that more housing or?
Condos is what's proposed. Do I have that correct?
There's a pond here, and there's
Condos,
another
correct?
pond
Yeah.
down
Condos
here.
are
There's two ponds.
Yep.
How many?
down by the old town hall. The proposal, the tentative proposal is condos?
19 proposed standalone, single-family condo.
There you go.
19 buildings. I'm sorry, I just don't know the.
It hasn't been actually being in a butter because you're right across the tracks, but within the footage, when we file with planning board, we'll
No, I'm just
Okay.
asking, individual condominiums, is that 19 buildings or 6 buildings?
No, standalone, 1,554 square feet each, separated by 20 feet.
Okay.
Standalones.
Oh, it's sort of like houses.
Sort of.
Yeah, sort of.
Sort of. If we went up to the hill and separated them, put 20 feet between them, that's what it would look like.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Questions on any of this?
So here would be my question. I think it's great if we can do it. Let's do it. But traffic. You'll solve the problem for the people coming from the hill. But if
From
you
the hill?
develop, make from where the condominiums are now.
Oh, up in here?
Yeah,
Oh,
over
okay.
there.
Yeah.
So you'll solve a lot of their traffic problems. But let's be real, if you add, let's be conservative, 75, 100 additional units,
Mhm.
and you don't do anything with Main Street, you're gonna have some congestion.
Yeah.
Anytime you add any increased density in the center of town, it brings issues that we have to work our way through. Yep, you're right.
There was a traffic study done for building a school.
Mhm.
And they were supposed to take into consideration plans to build out the town center.
Mhm.
And what did they recommend? 'Cause it seems to me at some point there's got to be a light.
I don't remember, to be honest with you.
Is that a roundabout at the end of Boardman?
Proposed,
Oh,
proposed
roundabout.
around, that would be a proposed concept.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a drawing. It could be a stoplight, could be a roundabout. It won't be a tunnel, that much we're confident in. It's just a drawing. I don't know how else to say it. I know, don't focus on whether it's a roundabout or a stoplight, because we have no idea. We have no idea.
Roundabout.
Yeah.
I have to do
So-
something because there's quite a bit of traffic there.
How do you prioritize sort of what's first, what's second?
Our first priority is this bridge right
Okay.
now, because we've, as you may have heard earlier, we've been trying for 9 years to get funding for this.
Yeah.
We are in the queue to get funding right now. In fact, I talked with Dan Winslow today, and there's a new development on it. We're getting closer and closer.
Yeah.
So we think we've got a reasonable opportunity to actually get state money to do this. And we've come close before. So you hate to get too excited until it all happens, but we're in the queue and it's moving along. This is the first thing, because this will take some years to develop.
Yep.
The second step, I think, we have two things that we have to do before we can do any of this. One is to make sure that our zoning fits what the picture is, which is a whole different, that's the hard part. John Weddleton said it very well at our meeting one time when we were working through the video. He said, this is the fun part and the easy part. Once that's all done, now we really got to get to work. Because we have to figure out what the zoning, what changes need to be tweaked. We don't think it's a lot, but what we have to do to change some of the zoning and make all this work. And then we have to look at the infrastructure, stormwater drainage, gas, sewerage. We have to look at all of that and figure out what we need and how we get that. So it isn't an easy, short-term project. This will
No.
take many, many, many years.
This looks like 20 years at least.
Maybe longer.
Yeah.
Maybe longer.
Bob is queued up to talk about
Oh, okay.
this.
Bob is queued up to talk about that. Bob, turn it
Well,
over to you.
Just
You led right into your question.
repeating what you have said is that the in order for any of this areas here to occur, there will need to be some zoning to either revise or adapt to let that happen. And that may be an issue for discussion at the fall town meeting. The infrastructure we need, the bridge is a high priority. There is an existing stormwater system built in 1996 that is not yet available to commercial or any of the town center development. That's an issue that could enhance the feasibility of development, so that's one of the infrastructure pieces that if people need more information, I have a second map I could show them. And then the other issues were to identify locations where residential density could increase and locations where commercial development with possibly residential development above it could occur if the infrastructure were in place, and that's what is shown on this map here. The infrastructure we're assuming we can pursue through the MassWorks Infrastructure Grants Program, which we've had a meeting now with the Economic Office of Housing and Commercial Development and Representative Dan Winslow, and have gotten some priority support for that. So we're looking at a program that will allow that infrastructure application to occur for review this September. And that's basically the issues involved before the private sector can be comfortable that they have the programs available to them to facilitate their development options.
I just have a quick question about the housing development and any other development condominiums along there. Will they have their own wastewater, or?
That is an issue to be determined. They can exist that way. There is a study that was done a number of years ago that said it's feasible to have wastewater infrastructure created, but it is expensive, and the state grant program is another one that would have to reinforce and supplement that.
Okay, Bob, I apologize. Dan Winslow joined us, and he has to leave. He's in his 16th meeting tonight, and he's got the 17th. But I thought it would be important, I apologize, Bob, thank you, but I thought it would be important for him to share a little bit about what he's doing to help us in terms of this grant and the bridge and what it means to us.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you all, and thank you for indulging me, taking me out of order. I did a lot of this way back when with Bob Nicodemus, who gave me my start in Norfolk politics, so you blame him. I just wanted to report that yesterday in the transportation bond bill, the House of Representatives approved a $3 million appropriation earmark for the Main Street Bridge construction. $1 million grant, $2 million no interest loan payable back over 20 years, starting in 2018, at fiscal year 2018, presumably from increased property tax growth. And doesn't mean we have it, that just starts the process off, but it's valuable because it's an expression of the House of Representatives in support of that planning, that construction grant. And that's something that even if the earmark itself doesn't go through the Senate and get signed by the governor, it's still something that will be able to assert to the agency why they should use state money to help fund this bridge to have a complete circulation pattern in downtown Norfolk. We have been designated, our town center has been designated as a priority site for state interest because we are building really one of the cutting edge land use models in the Commonwealth here. We have really some of the best examples of smart growth zoning in Massachusetts, and we're really writing on a blank slate because we can do best practices here. We're not tearing other things down or trying to undo bad land use patterns to be able to put something in its place. We're starting with a blank slate, and that's really exciting. So I just wanted to pass along to you that optimistic news. It's not a grand slam. We're not sliding in a home, but we certainly got a pretty good ground rule double yesterday in the House, and I've been working with Senator Ross to see if we can get that extended to the Senate, and then hopefully have the governor's desk be favorably receptive to it as well. So that's so far so good from the State House, and I wanted to share that news with you all, and thank you for indulging my time out of order. Thank you.
pretty much caps off the discussion. I say, if anybody's interested, there is that grant program that we're anxious to see happen, and there is stormwater available to property development that has to just simply be initiated. Those infrastructure programs exist and are available for implementation with minor approvals from the state and local boards.
Do we know yet if anyone's ever going to build a supermarket in that property? I know it's available, it's been available.
I can't really speak to that. The planning board has had some comment with that, but Stop and Shop controls the property. Stop and Shop has said they've got a prototype 30,000 square foot building that's in its so-called test year of operation in another town. We don't know what's going to happen, and it's been at least 5 years since they got their initial approval.
I think if we do indeed get that bridge across the tracks here, that'll bring in more traffic and may make it more attractive for them to finally get off their duff and do something.
Do we think though we have the population to really utilize grocery store?
I can tell you this, that except for Stop and Shop, there have been 6 supermarket companies interested in that location.
Really? Okay.
But Stop and Shop doesn't want the competition.
That's why they buy land.
Exactly.
But they're not going to, they haven't done anything.
They're not going to do anything.
And my worry is if we ever put something in there and it didn't succeed and you had this big empty
Well,
building.
I think that there are other development programs that include some food use that could be considered, but as I say, the property controller, not landowner, for that property is beyond what we can deal with now, other than deal with what could happen around it.
And is there an end point where, you say, okay, it's been 10 years since do you guys sort of have this?
They own it.
So they own it, so there's, could this go on
I
for
would have
20
to
years?
defer to the planning board or the selectmen.
I'm Andrea Langhouse with the planning board.
Yeah.
We have Stop and Shop and Tom Houston, our professional engineer, I need to be more tuned to the details of this. They have taken care of, or they're in the process of taking care of a punch list of items that need to be done in the section of the roadway area around Walgreens.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding that they are going to let, if they haven't already, let the permit for the grocery store lapse, and they'll start fresh.
What does
They
that
don't-
mean, they'll let it lapse and start fresh?
It means that they have plenty of time to develop, and they chose not to, and they'll have to start again.
Okay.
But they still are the landowner.
Yeah.
Is that correct, Tom?
It is correct with respect to the punch list on Liberty Lane completing that. I have not heard that they've wanted to let the site plan review.
We don't really get, they've been out of communication.
Yeah.
They've been out of communication with us.
Yeah. For years.
We have kept them on, the communication goes as far as what they are responsible to do associated with the Walgreens area.
Yeah. Do they own the Walgreens as well, that area, or is that a separate?
The issue is that they control it. There are 2 entities. There's Stop and Shop, who owns the Walgreens property, and there's the so-called food store area, which is owned by the development company, which Stop and Shop controls, but the development company owns it, and that's a legal situation.
So they could hold on to this for years. Yeah, we'd never do anything.
They're
known for
landowners. The town can offer incentives,
Yeah.
but the landowner has to take them up on it.
They're known
Just
for
don't shop
doing
at
this.
Stop and
That's
Shop,
how I
and they
know.
go down the
Yeah,
tubes and
that's so annoying.
They've done it for decades throughout New
Right.
England.
Throughout,
That's-
they're just known for this.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. I thought-
Stop and Shop waited so long in Foxborough that if you ever go into the Foxborough Stop and Shop, it's empty most of the time, because most of the people in Foxborough go to Mansfield, where they've been going.
So even when grocery stores move in, a lot of times what you're used to is what you're used to. And you'll go the extra distance.
This we do know, that if we can get the bridge, and we can create a traffic flow, and we can increase some residential density in the center of town, that land becomes more valuable.
Yeah.
That we do know. What'll happen with it, who knows?
So if you build it, they
but
will come?
The rules change. Well, to some degree,
Yeah.
there's some truth to
I
that,
think-
yes. If you do create the opportunity, if you create the density, you create the flow, and you create the infrastructure, things happen.
Yeah.
Property that now may not have the same set of value to somebody, now all of a sudden becomes more valuable. So it changes the deal. Now, where it'll go, we don't know. You know, would they sell it, would they not sell it? Peter?
Just a point of clarification, like Andrea on the planning board, and keeping whether Stop and Shop is in or out, they've been in and out so often that we can't even keep it straight, so not to hold it against her, but technically, the site plan itself for the grocery market proper has expired because of time constraints. But to back up a little, other grocery companies, one by name because I dealt with them directly, Hannaford's, who has built successfully a 35,000 square foot footprint down towards Taunton area, actually in other areas of the state, but in case you happen to be in that direction. They, every time I've contacted them and said, are you interested in coming? Because they don't have a footprint out this way. See, this, you know, grocery companies do two things. They play for offense or play for defense. Unfortunately, Stop and Shop is playing here for defense. They ask me two questions all the time. One, does Stop and Shop still have their permits? And two, do you have circulation in the downtown yet? Those are the two questions they always ask. They have nothing against the town. They love the demographics. It's the size that would work for their company size, but we just don't have it in place yet. So to back up Bob's comment, I've only dealt with one of them. I'm sure he's heard as an economic development member, probably from a lot more.
Our role in this is to create the opportunity. We're going to work with the parts we can control and we can influence. We can try. I've met with Stop and Shop over the years, and I won't shop there. I mean, you know, so mad I am at them, so I'm a bad example. But you know, the point is, we're just going to. Our job is to create the opportunity. That's what this is all about, and it will come to some degree over time, and it may be a long time.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Sort of a newbie to all this, but I see the renderings of the retail space and all that, which I think looks absolutely fantastic. But then I look at that empty retail space over there, and I think, okay, how are you going to populate that with shops when that's been empty? So what's the story with that? Because that concerns me if we're going to build more retail and we haven't built that.
As a fact, there are two issues that are going on right now. One is that the rent they are asking is for downtown Boston retail uses.
They being Walgreens again?
Yes.
Okay.
Not
Yeah.
Walgreens.
No, not Walgreens.
Next to Walgreens, the two vacant
No, I
buildings
know.
next to
So who
Walgreens.
owns that is what I'm wondering. Who's they, the rent?
Stop and Shop.
Stop and Shop.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
They are
But
the
they're asking for rents that you don't even get in downtown
So
Boston.
do they want to keep it vacant then? Are they?
One might wonder. You have to ask
Okay, so
them.
that's the first issue. The rent is ridiculous.
Right, and to create a development program that allows for subsidizing rents, as Jim has said, residential above retail is a way to allow those rents to get to the level that suburban retail could afford.
You have to make the opportunity. Pardon me. You have to make the opportunity practical for a developer. It has to work for them financially. We can have wonderful plans, but if it doesn't work financially for them, they're not going to build
Has
it.
the Boston Globe ever picked up on this? I almost think it would be kind of cool to get this in like the metro section, so just to see what they're doing. I mean, that's a bad example. I mean, that's awful that they've made the rent. And just shine the spotlight and embarrass them. Is that a dumb idea? I don't know. I
No,
just
it's
think
not, but I
bad
think you have
PR is possible. I mean, that's just bad PR for them.
You have to go far to embarrass
Well,
them.
just said, I think they're beyond embarrassment. Yes, sir.
So this is new information, that Walgreens is actually on land owned by Stop and Shop, is
It's a
that?
lease arrangement.
And those two vacant buildings next to Walgreens, or that one vacant building with the two vacancies, that's also owned by Stop and Shop?
Yes.
Is there any other land in this footprint That'd be beyond the store.
Yes.
All of this land here is owned by Stop and Shop.
Okay.
This is Walgreens, this is the vacant building.
Yeah.
So all of this land is owned or controlled by Stop and Shop.
So they could hold on to this
Yeah.
They could.
as landowners,
It'll be up-
and this plan seems to hinge somewhat on this footprint, right?
5 years ago, the town gave the Board of Selectmen authority to set up what's known as an Economic Development Committee. Or economic, I may have that slightly wrong, but I think I have that a little bit wrong. But it is a way to create a taking of the land if it's considered to be a financial blight on the community. You do have, it's not the friendly way to do it. It takes time, probably a couple of years, but it did happen in Connecticut, specifically with Stop and Shop land. There is a means to deal with it in an unfriendly manner if it ever came to that. We've never exercised it because there's no benefit to doing it. We don't have the infrastructure in place. We don't have the traffic flow in place. Once we get this in place, we'll see what happens. But there are things you can do.
Litigation?
It involves, yeah.
How many, supposing all of this comes to pass, how many housing units are we talking about?
Well, Mr. Weddleton, you can join us. Because one of the reasons that this is important, well, it's important for a lot of reasons. One, it creates wonderful opportunities for people to develop businesses. We'd like to have more people living around the center of our town. You know, I mean, we don't want to create massive numbers, you know, we don't want to create what you see over here on Route 1, but we'd love to create some more of what you see on top of the hill, you know? And so we would create some traffic and some patterns, because we know we need that. The other reason it creates revenue. It will generate, you know, the build out of this community, you know, the numbers scare you because they would literally, I don't know, I get excited thinking about it, but I won't be here when it happens, more than likely. But the potential is substantial. So John is a developer in town. He owns a piece of this property that you see here on this map. And John has done some financials on this for us in terms of what it could mean. And I'm going to turn it over to him just to even talk just about the residential component of it.
Right now, with current zoning, there's approximately, I'd say, roughly 200 units of residential that can be built by right now. And as far as retail and office, there's probably 7 or 8 30,000 square foot lots in there that all could accommodate 6 to 10 stores, retail stores downstairs. Each of those retail building footprints, with the cost involved, the tax rates, would probably bring in $35,000 each in revenue. So you're talking, with the retail area, a good $250 conservatively, probably up to more like $350 in revenue. Now, if the condominiums are sold 2 bedrooms to not infringe on the schools, etc., they're sold as 2-bedroom, 2-bath units, and sold inexpensively because of the trains, etc., for $300,000 a unit, which is $100,000 less than anything selling in town currently. The revenue from each condo would be $5,000 with very little strain on town finances or infrastructure. That's $1 million there. So with current zoning right now, we have the potential to have revenue increases of $1.25 million or possibly more. The reason we did this town center, and you know, you can't be a little way in, and the man here talked about the flow and people driving by Walgreens, we missed that. I mean, if we don't develop a full utility of a bunch of shops and make this a destination with interactivity with restaurants and things like that, if we do that, passing by Walgreens with the MBTA is going to be just an insignificant point. Most people leaving the MBTA don't shop anyway, they go straight home. The egresses in town are substantial. We have an egress on either end of Main Street. We have an egress that could be up through Borelli's, through my subdivision up in the back. We have an egress that go beside Bork's building and out in the back, that section. So we have the benefit of develop this town with multiple egresses to not infringe on the traffic. We start this venture knowing that the most important development in any town is the center of town. It's what gives people utility places to eat, shop. It gives revenue to the town, which I just mentioned, And also, it increases property values. The one thing people focus on is I talk with customers for 10 years in this town to look to buy property. The center of town is an indication of who you are. And coming through with empty stores, with stores that are just inadequate, good businesses don't want to rent dumps. They don't want to rent places that have no parking. They don't want to rent places that have roofs falling. They don't want that. They want something to invest in their business, be proud of. We're trying to develop components here so that a guy like me will spend a whole bunch of money and build a building knowing that I'm going to get not a great return because of our location, but initially at least a break even or more, because we can develop enough residents to subsidize all the retail space that we flatly have to rent for $8 or $10 a foot, less than this building over here is renting for. How can that building over there, just to give you history, it sat 5 years. The rent of that right now is $25 a foot, which is real high. You pay all of the cost on that, and then it's going to cost you $250,000 to fix up the inside to open up. No one's going to open up a wine and cheese shop and spend that money. Our theory is with enough residential in town, we can, as a developer, get the money for the debt service what it costs to build these things and offer small entrepreneurs, little shops, varied shops to come in, spend $14, $15 a foot, make a go of the business, and come up with an idea that maybe they've wanted to have for years, but they never had the opportunity. That's what we're trying to do. And it's a huge conquest, because right now, without a gas line that's right at the roundabout, we'll never have a decent restaurant. Restaurants don't go on propane. We need high-tech in here, which I believe we have. We need traffic flow from the bridge. We need a commitment from this town and the people involved in the important points in this town. Norfolk has been known as Nova and Norfolk for years. Now it's killing us. And people like us and our banks, we can buy land anywhere. We don't choose to go to a place that's unfriendly, that has laws, bylaws, zoning. For years, people created zoning, and financially, it was impossible to build on one of these lots because it was absolutely not even close to reality to ever make a break even by the components of what they allowed you to do. That has changed quite a bit in the past 3 or 4 years. It still needs more. There still needs minor attitudinal changes in the town with the people that matter to make this go. The people in town have to want this because, like I said, you can't just be a little bit for it. You either are for developing a center of town that has vitality and is dynamic, or you're going to have bits and pieces here and there. You may have a man that buys a strip mall, puts a couple of junk stores in, brings relatively no revenue for the town, and sits there, like we have over here in the Pacini building. I mean, that's what you're going to get. So it's like you're either all in or you're not in. We either have the right traffic flow at the bridge, we have the utilities, the infrastructure, so when I put a building up, I don't have to spend 1/3 of my lot and have drainage basins in there to collect the drainage when we have pipes in the center of this town that can accommodate the drainage with some small adjustments cost-wise to bring it down towards the south section. So it's a whole commitment, but what the town gets if they commit to it and they stick to it, it may take 5 years, may take 10 years, but to give someone the incentive to step up and say, geez, I think I can make this work, or somebody local like myself that wants to do something for the town, all the pieces have to fit in place. And our committee was put together to try to put the pieces together and get a feedback from the town of what you folks want. The biggest thing, the stumbling block, I mean, the center of town here in Stop and Shop, there's lots that have been off and on for sale for 3 years. We've had clients from our accounting firm that have looked to buy it. It's not going to happen. People don't buy retail on dead-end streets. It just doesn't happen. If we have the bridge there, Stop and Shop may kick up. And they do have an incentive because they're paying a land lease to Eastern Development for hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. That's what they spend to keep that empty. So I'm sure they'd like to have some projects going and some buildings built and rented. But they have to have the facility to make sure they have traffic to survive. So you've got all these components that are mixed in. It takes time. It takes a lot of work from a lot of the people here that have been involved for 2, 3, 10 years in some cases to get together, and the willingness for the town to say, geez, we really want this. There really is $1.25 million in there, and we can show you the math and the structure of the buildings to make it happen. And this $1.25 million in tax revenue, it's every year. That's not just now, that's every single year. So, you know, the commitment to this thing is just long, it's steadfast, and I think if we're fortunate enough to get the ball rolling and get some funding for the bridge, then it becomes a job for the townspeople to decide, do they want to go forward with this? Do they want to make the commitment to make this thing happen? Granted, it may be in bits and pieces, but this stuff feeds off one another. One person puts up a building, and the building's successful, and there's 2 restaurants where people come from abutting towns because the chefs are that good. It all feeds. Now the next guy with the empty lot, or the guy selling the land, he decides to step up, and it feeds off his stuff, which is what real estate does. But the nuts and bolts at the start are very hard, it's very tedious, it's very frustrating, and Dan Winslow has been super in trying to get us funding for this thing, and if we have success, we will have the impetus to really get this thing started. Then it becomes the commitment for the town, the board members here, the people involved, to change some of the rules, to get this reputation from Norfolk subsided so that we have business in here and we have revenue in here from outside folks. Now I said a lot. Does anybody have any questions?
I want to applaud you. I think you're awesome.
Actually, we were working on John trying to build up his passion for this, just a little bit more enthusiasm.
Your last comment, though, is key, and the last comment was bringing people from outside the town into town for them to spend their money instead of us spending our money.
Buildings and retail will not subsidize on the local folks. You have to have shops and things that bring other towns in.
No, I understand that. And because of what you're saying, I just wonder, why is anybody going to come off the beaten path to come all the way into town?
I can tell you shoe clients I have that have restaurants that are 80-person restaurants. One's in Randolph and one's in Cohasset. We have people from 9 towns around, including me, that drive all the way there because the food is outstanding, the prices are right. People travel for certain things that they like.
No, I understand that, but you're not talking about the occasional Saturday night. You're talking about Sunday through Saturday having people flow. And I guess I wonder why, or maybe you did we ever look at 1A and 115 whereby you can come off of one, you are in and out going to the stadiums, in terms of flow?
Let me give you an example. There's a restaurant in Sherburne called the Sherburne Inn.
Yeah.
And they built a little lounge area. They've become less formal. I know the person that owns that. He tells me that 75% of his customers come from other towns.
Oh, I believe
He's
that.
busy every night. Every night.
I
The
go
reason
there.
they go there is
I
they
go
like,
there all the time.
why do you go there? You like the atmosphere, the food's good, it's a pleasant place to have dinner. If you had a place here, atmosphere is good food is good, pleasant place to have dinner, it's no different.
Norwood brought vitality to the town of Norfolk, which was dead empty with empty buildings where my accounting office is. 12 years ago, they were awarded 10 liquor licenses or beer and wine licenses. And overnight, they brought in 9 restaurants.
Is this Norwood?
You go through Norwood Center now, it's dynamic. They're all busy, they're coming from everywhere. There's people that linger, they go into the shops. It feeds off itself because it's proven that eating establishments bring people and then people stay. And it becomes cliquey and catches on. And like I said, if you're offering some of these businesses a fair rent, not $25 a foot, a fair rent, now you give them a pro forma financial statement that's easy to work if they don't have this overflowing customers 5 days a week. You make it doable for them. The way the Stop and Shop is creating their buildings with nothing above, a standalone building with outrageous price because it's not subsidized by units above, they have to charge this exorbitant price to get a business, and it's not going to happen. And we're not going to have chains in the town of Norfolk. The dynamics are not even close to having a chain restaurant. These are going to be individual people that have skills, that have trades, that have crafts or something like that, that's going to fill the town. Much like Chatham Center, something like that, where the rents are similar, $18, $19 a foot. I mean, it's a different dynamic being a summer place, but still, all these shops, there's no big name shops. They're all people that are locally owned, and many of them, and they all do business with people from Chatham and many towns from around there.
I want to just remind you of something that Dan Winslow said. You may not have actually picked up on it. But he talked about the fact that Norfolk is in a unique situation. and I know other selectmen around that I've gotten to know over the last few years, that would kill to have the opportunity we have. They're stuck with a town center they can't change. We have a town center we can construct. And a lot of people never get that opportunity. If you think about maybe the towns you grew up in or where you came from, we have opportunities here to do it right. If we can come up with a plan that makes sense, that people like, that fits the culture, that retains the colonial small town image that we like and love about our town. The library, I remember when we built this library, people fought it. Oh, we don't need this big library. It's the busiest place in town. It's constantly open, constantly full. You can't, I mean, we had to book this up 2 months in advance to get this room. You know, this is what we're trying to do.
With three little projects, the rooms at Town Edge is at half capacity. There's 70 more families going in there, and if it's over 55, then many will dine out. There's 50 units that are starting right now up off of Maple Street with the Pulte group at Fox Run. There's 50 families, and they'll build that out in probably 3 years or less. And I have 35 lots left over there, and it goes on. We have a lot of families coming to town. So these people go out to eat, they go out to breakfast, etc., and they need a place to go, and we have no place for them to go. So,
Yeah, just what zoning, you mentioned that we have to change the rules of the zoning, but it's B1. Is there some different zoning
oh,
that
sure.
we need? What?
B1 probably has 70, 80, 100 different bylaws all within that on what you can and can't do and how.
So what would you change this to? I mean, it seems to me
Oh,
B1 is
it was
next.
one of the only things, a lot of them are just stumbling blocks for somebody coming in that would lead them not to come in because they have a chance to be shut down. So some things that really are only development concerned and don't relate to general numbers. But the only thing we've talked about here is on some of the buildings and some of the spots, and again, this is if it's acceptable to the town, rather than having 1 story of residential over all these retail, having 2 stories. Right now, there's not a mixed use in Metro West that has 1 and 1 because the numbers don't work. You go to Mansfield, which started this, there's 3 or 4 stories. You go to Wellesley, which is older and new, there's 5 stories, but the 1 and 1 numbers don't work. So we were talking about possibly, and it wouldn't change the height restrictions that much, maybe a few feet, but talking just, the problem there would be the sewer and how we're going to handle that. But if that was the case, the residential components could go from maybe 200 units to maybe 275 or something. I don't think anybody in our little committee ever thought of having more than 300 units. Did you, Jim, in the center of town all at once? But it's things like that that enable someone to go take a chance and build a building and sell the units on the top 2 floors and have enough debt relief to offer these shops downstairs at a price that people locally could afford. And that's what it's about. Having something that people can afford, not $25 a foot, certainly not $35 a foot. Yes, ma'am.
I'm in a minority here, but I'd like to make 2 points. One is, I've lived in this town over 50 years, and every year they work on zoning laws, work on zoning laws, work on zoning laws. But you have to realize, if these people over the last 50 years didn't put in these tight zoning laws, you people today would not have this opportunity. So when you go and you talk to me about changing zoning laws, I get very nervous.
Everybody
They've been
does.
changed and changed and changed, and there's got to be some point where you have to be very careful and draw the line. My
Exactly.
other question is we have empty stores here, there, and everywhere. Why? And they are not on dead-end places. And they have a lot of traffic going through them. Why are they not profitable? Why are they not being used?
Do you know any shop that's around here where people would come from out of towns just to go shop at that shop? And I can't think of one.
But the stores we have now are not what the stores that we had before. We had a lumber store, we had a
Yeah, well, I can't
pharmacy
speak
before
about that.
Walgreens went in.
Yeah.
These stores, these convenience stores were not at one time convenience stores. They have gone down. So the thing is, why did the people who lived there, not live there, who had going businesses there before, lose out and move out?
Can't answer that. But, you know, times change. I can tell you briefly on the lumber thing. There's not a small lumber yard around now that can succeed. Everything has become an oligopoly. And that's why you don't have any small pharmacy for that reason. I mean, so the dynamics have changed quite a bit, but right now, you're right, the zoning is scary, and that's why it takes a 2/3 vote to pass any zoning bylaws. You know, over the past 10 years, we haven't, I wouldn't say we put a lot of zoning changes in. Some of them all concerned to the B1 district to try to make it more financially responsible to get some of the bill, because, you know, if you have things sitting for 15 years with zoning and no big bills, there's probably something wrong with the zoning.
Let me give you an example, because you're right, you have to be careful with zoning, and I couldn't agree with you more that we need to be cautious and take steps to make sure that we're doing it right. The 3 stories that he's talking about, we have a limit of 40 feet. That's what the zoning currently says. John, correct me if I'm wrong. You could build 3 stories with 40 feet.
Correct.
See, the problem is that can you get the roof design that you want? You want a colonial sloped roof. You want it to look nice. You want it to fit in with the community. We might need 45 feet to accomplish that instead of 40 feet. So that's the type of change we're talking about. We're talking about tweaking the zoning to accommodate what we think the community wants. That's why we're holding this meeting, to share the concept, to share the idea that if we can make it work, if this is something we want to do, if we want to leave it the way it is, we're wasting our time. We're all wasting our time. We'll go do something else. We'll go try something else.
Jim,
But
can I give some perspective to
we
that?
have an opportunity, we see the opportunity, and we have a revenue opportunity, and we need revenue.
The other problem I have is I live on Main Street, and the traffic is atrocious. I cannot understand, if you put in more buildings and more restaurants, how you're going to manage this traffic. I can't get out of my driveway. I'm afraid even to open my mailbox because they just whiz by.
Yeah, I agree with you, and traffic pattern is something we have to look at. All of that's a component of the planning. I mean, the planning board, there are several members still here from the planning board, you know, they have very specific requirements around parking, and they have to do traffic studies for all these businesses. All that will be part of what we have to undertake as this moves along. We're at the conceptual stage. We're looking at what the potential could be, and it all starts with this. And we're trying very hard. One of the reasons we did this video, we brought some people out from Boston to take a look at the opportunity. To get state money, you need to have a reason. They need a reason why they need to give it to you. And our reason is very simple. It is the key pin for us that allows us to develop this community. We can't do it without that bridge. We cannot create this traffic flow. We cannot create the residential components that we need without that bridge.
But aren't you talking about having small businesses come in?
Yeah.
So why can't the small businesses go into the spaces we have available now?
Because nobody wants to go
Because
into
nobody
that.
wants to
Nobody
go
wants to
to
go
the
there.
dilapidated
What's the
building.
difference between having the house, the building there, and having the building over there?
Would you like to open up a
Exactly.
gift shop where you're all by yourself? Or would you rather open up a gift shop with 30 other businesses right by that all do different things to bring in traffic?
And
That's why we have malls.
What are those other businesses?
That's what we're looking to develop.
We've had inquiries for wine and cheese stores. We've had chiropractors. We've had a number, all recently. We have had people coming into the community wanting to start businesses here. We don't have a place to put them. They don't want to go there. They do not want to go there.
It's too
Believe me. The florist. Do you remember the florist that used to be there?
Yeah.
They didn't leave because they wanted to. We'll let it rest at that. I mean, they left because literally they couldn't stay there. No, it wasn't a business issue. It was not a business issue. It was the building.
If you have a
That was
shop,
great
and you have a
floor.
great product, but
They
you're
did
in
a
a
great
visually
job.
depressed-looking building, I could have a great wine and cheese shop, a phenomenal product, but if the outside of my building looks dumpy, and I'm just gonna be honest, I'm not going in there. So why would I spend my time investing in this business, putting it in a building that is not gonna draw people in? It's too much of a
You
risk.
don't get a physician's group, you don't get a high-end chiropractor. No, they
It's-
want
why would you
something
go-
to be proud of when their patients or
Exactly,
clients walk
exactly.
in. They want to be proud of what they have, and
Yeah.
we don't have anything in here right now.
I don't understand that answer, though, because the existing businesses, the two in Norfolk Food Market, they've been there forever. I don't know if they're having issues, but they've been there forever. The stores where the House of Pizza is and Linda's Variety, most of those businesses have been there since I moved here. But there are empty storefronts. Now, it's either one of two things. Either it's a bad situation like next to Norfolk Food Mart, or they can't fill the spaces because those businesses apparently are successful. They're stable. They've been there for quite a while. it can't be just an issue, oh, the building is not that great. If that were the case, people would have, those businesses would
There's a
have.
big difference between that building
Yeah.
and this building.
I understand that, but
Big
there's a business like next to Dr. Passenkoff's office. There used to be one on either side that were empty, one is now filled, I believe. There's one on, to his left as you look at the building. There's the building at the corner of Boardman and Main that's been empty since I've been here. What's the issue? That's not the, if the issue is not the building there, because it's a brand-new building.
There's plenty of issues why people don't move into spots. One of them is you want to be proud of your location. I mean, the O'Laughlin building down the way is, it's not mud, but it's an attractive, well-kept building. He's been filled for a long time.
Where is that?
No problem. The convenience store over here, those fellows have become creative, and if you notice that more and more becomes a package store as you go along. Eventually, that'll be a sold package store because they can't make a living on the convenience they're selling. There's no package stores here yet. Once there is one, there'll probably be a problem, but
There's no package?
in the center of town.
Yeah.
What about Linda's Variety?
That's what I'm
That's
talking
what
about.
I'm saying.
There is a, but
Linda's Variety
Norfolk,
have
Norfolk
one.
Food Mart also has a beer and wine license too.
Right.
But they don't have a liquor license.
I understand, they're applying for that, but.
I mean, businesses move to places for many different reasons. Depends on what type of business you want. I tell you one thing, you could build an ugly strip mall, and I guarantee you with the rent right, because they're inexpensive to build, you could have 3 nail salons in there and 2 pizza shops just like that. Not a problem. Is that what you want?
Obviously, well, there's gotta be another reason why these storefronts are empty, besides the two at Norfolk Food Mart.
Norfolk has no dynamics in the center of town.
So that's the reason?
Without a doubt.
It's a primary reason.
It's one of them.
So,
yeah.
so is,
Without a doubt.
so the building at, next to, at Sovereign there, where Dr. Passenkoff's office is, there's an open space there. What's the issue there? Is it because it's an ugly
It hasn't
building?
been that empty.
I'm sorry?
It hasn't been empty.
He's mostly full.
Right.
But there's one that's been empty for quite a while.
But you know what?
Is it an empty, is it because it's an ugly building?
On a long-term basis, the Holmes building, I forget what they call the corner building there. You know, that has traditionally never been empty.
What's that? Which one is this now?
The Sovereign building,
Okay.
okay? I mean, we're going through the worst 4 to 5 year economic period ever. I remember calling up and asking about space there years ago, and someone said, do you have any vacancy? And the answer was, not for 19 years. You know, that was the answer. We're going through a unique period here. I'd like to address a couple comments, unique comments, one about the Pacini building, which is next to Daly's gas station, okay? One, I was a member of the Board of Health for 10 years, and I'm currently a 4-year member of the Planning Board. There are 2 issues, and 2 issues only, that limit their vacancies, tenancy, whatever you want to say. One, as soon as you have a use that is abandoned more than 2 years, you lose the rights to it. So you have to kind of start fresh with all the new existing overriding zoning, which is fairly rigorous in this town, okay? Secondly, regardless of the Board of Health regs in this town, there is no septic to take in what people would be willing to, 1, move in there, 2, do a fit out, 3, fix the overriding structural issues that I didn't realize exist because I don't know the building or the Pacinis. I know what goes on around it because I happen to be on the boards, okay? Those are the reasons why. And I think infrastructure-wise, that's what the Pacini family has been waiting for years, okay, is for some changes for stormwater that Bob Nicodemus has worked very hard on. Changes for potentially either septic, small package treatment plant, sewerage. These are things that get stranded in buildings that are stuck on small lots in the older towns, and that's what you have on the Pacini building. Secondly, I will comment on the corner of Boardman and Main, a new building. I own it, okay? I've had a building permit open since 2008. It is a brand new building. It is done. We have occupancy for the 2nd floor. I have waited it out because I'm not going to shoot myself to the foot in waiting for the economy to turn. I have the luxury right now. I want to comment on 2 other issues that were concerns in this crowd. John talked about getting third floor units. if you need a reference point, that building, grade, ground level to peak, is currently 29 feet. I have a third story on the new perpendicular building to Main Street that only has a 6.5-foot ceiling in the third story. If I needed to go up 11 feet, which would be allowed by zoning, okay, I could easily put in a third story by existing zoning. So the changes that are going to come about actually exist today. John, having a much better and critical eye, if you've seen any of his homes, you'll realize that, okay, on how he wants to see the town look. Roof lines, this, that, I don't pretend. I'm an insurance guy, okay? I have no creativity, all right? And he has the ability to look how we want to see the town. He says, maybe a 42, a 45 foot. The difference of the zoning changes are negligible. Secondly, is this. We have 42 units that we approved down off of Holbrook Street, Pin Oaks. It now connects to Village at River's Edge, which has 134 units. I got to sit through that as not only a Board of Health member, but a Planning Board member. So we have 174 units already approved, and I think Tom DePlacido, and we're in his debt because he's done a beautiful project, has another 10 or 12 units on other pieces that he's picked up. Nice revenue for the town, okay? Just shy of a couple hundred units, compacted into less than 60 acres. I don't want you folks getting scared off because we want to put in 200, 250 units scattered all over the center because it's not even going to be as dense as those two successful developments down on 115 that pays a lot of bills for us today. I'm sorry, John, I didn't mean to interrupt.
The people from River's Edge drive to Millis and to Roaches.
And they do.
That's where they go.
And they would love to support this town because I know many of them.
No,
So do I.
right now we could have 200 residential units in the center of town with the current zone. I mean, the components of the zoning that are changing aren't the things that affect people like density or that. If you're going to build a building now, the planning board, design review board has the right to make you build a full-scale model replica of your building, every building around it, the roadways, the actual grades, and a whole $30,000 model plan, like you see on TV. It's kind of silly for our town. Normally, they waive it because it's sort of overkill. But with something like that in zoning, somebody coming knowing that they could make me do that model after I come to the planning board and I've spent $250,000 on engineering and architecture, knowing that that's in there, that they could possibly force me to produce this model would make some people not want to get started. They would go to another place where these open-end items wouldn't be in there. So those are more of the things that we focus on rather than size and heights and that. That pretty much is going to stay the way it is right now.
We need to sort of begin to wrap this up a little bit, but just one observation. We have only two choices. Okay? We can either just pack this up, put it back in the suitcase, and leave it just the way it is, or we can make an honest effort to try and make a change. And we have been meeting weekly for a long time. Everybody in this room is a resident of this town. We're all volunteers. We all live here. We're all just trying to do something that we think will help the town, because we like the town. We have no other agenda. And we're working hard to try and create a vision that we think will help generate revenue, create business opportunities. We know status quo isn't going to work. That much we know. Won't work. The buildings that are there now, they're going to stay vacant. They're going to stay vacant. They're going to rot. And $28 a square foot, we'll be looking at this moonscape for another 20 years. We've got to try. And we're working hard at doing that. And there'll be naysayers, and I'm not suggesting that's what you're saying. You're asking very legitimate questions, sir. But, there'll be people that say, I've had people tell me, I don't want anything to change. I like it just the way it is. That's an option. That's a viable option. And you'll still be 95% residential tax base. And we'll still struggle to fund the schools. And we'll still struggle to fund the police and the fire that we've been trying to do every year. And we haven't had an override for 7, 8 years? And we're financially sound, I can tell you. Our bond rating has gone up. Nothing's closed. We got through a mess better than most other towns did. There are a lot of towns that are very, very close to insolvency right now in this state. A lot of them. Some neighboring towns. Look at Mansfield. Hope nobody's watching. It's Mansfield. But, we've come through healthy. We're okay. We've got reserves. We never touched them. Our bond rating went up. We built a school. Because of that bond rating going up 3 years ago, saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we're doing some things right. And we think we have an opportunity to create some really uniqueness to this community if we can just get a few things done. And that's the purpose of this meeting, is just to share that vision, to share that image. We're going to keep working at this. We're not going to stop. We're going to fight hard to get that bridge. Dan Winslow's my neighbor. I've threatened him with physical violence if he doesn't get it done. We're going to work hard at this. And yes, there are a lot of issues that will evolve, but we all live here. We don't want to hurt the town. We're going to try and work together to come up with the right answers, and we'll be very public about it. This is a very open process. There's nothing going on that you don't know about. This is as open as you can get.
Can you repave the main road through the center of town? I close my eyes and I know when I'm in Norfolk. It's awful.
I will tell you this, that we have gotten more done on the roads, not enough.
I know.
We've gotten a lot done on the roads in the last 3
I'm
years
just
than we have
saying
in
the
the last
main
10.
street of this town
But
is what people see.
we have the
in
road
Norfolk.
crusader sitting right behind you.
I'm still working on it. Is this coming up at town meeting in the fall?
Yeah, what happens
We're not
next?
quite sure what we're going to be bringing forward in town meeting at this point. If this issue regarding the bridge continues to go that you heard Dan talk about, where we're being offered $1 million grant and $2 million loan, if somebody will give me $2 million and I don't have to pay it back until 2018 and only in over 20 years at 0% interest, where do I sign? That to me is a no-brainer. But we would not do that without you people approving it. That's something that we would come to the town meeting and say, do you support this? Because we're not going to obligate the town without everybody agreeing that this is the right thing to do. But if we could get that, I'd smile to the signing ceremony. I mean, that would be terrific if we could pull that off.
And the last question I had, going back to the residences here, or the build out of the residences, I think somebody said it's not going to impact on the numbers at schools?
Right now,
do we see it?
just give you tell you a couple of things. I was on the school committee back in the 80s and the 90s. We have fewer students in our elementary school today than we had back in 1990, by over 100. We have over 100 fewer students. We have a beautiful $38 million school that we just constructed. You've got to go through it when it opens. It's absolutely gorgeous. State-of-the-art facility. We have a new middle school. We have a new high school. H. Olive Day is still a very viable, attractive facility. We've solved our educational issues. We have a very attractive plant all the way K through 12 for our students now. And that attracts people. When you have a physical facility that attracts, this is good for the town. There's an old saying that the most expensive room in your home is the classroom. The quality of your schools is directly tied to the value of your homes. The absolute fact. So we made a very wise, expensive, admittedly, and we're paying for it, but we made a wise decision. So we have, the point is we have capacity. We have more than enough capacity. There's this myth. Jim said at one time in a meeting, the old equation, every child that comes in does not cost the town $10,000. It's not a linear equation. We have the capacity to take more growth in this community and not strain our schools.
Demographic trends, not only in our town but other towns, is fewer kids being born, and so there is going to be a blip. I mean, I think the numbers over the last 10 years show that decline.
I'm doing my share. I have 6 grandkids in the school system, so I'm working hard at this.
I just have what may or may not be a quick question, but I watched, you'll have to let Jack know that I've watched many of this Board of Selectmen's meetings, and there's some talk of doing 40R development.
Yep.
Is that really what this is?
No.
A mixed town?
That's right here. This was the area we considered for 40R. Okay? The reason we looked at 40R is it creates a revenue flow. The owner of this property actually was trying to help the town.
Yeah.
Okay, it creates a revenue flow for the town. We get money for every home that's built. But there's some issues with 40R that require certain levels of density and things of that nature that may not be suitable to the developer or the town. And this particular piece of property is, the individual that owns has been very cooperative, really wants to work with the town to make it happen.
That's by senior housing.
But he,
by senior housing.
yeah, the housing authority's right here.
Yeah, it's by there.
And this is a beautiful piece of property. And, you know, Kid's Place is moving over to Gump's.
Who owns that?
This piece here,
Yeah.
it's owned by a gentleman by the name of Mr. Kelly, who happens to be in the back of the room. But anyway, we did talk about the potential of 40R. We haven't done any, we're not moving in that direction at this point in time, but you know, if we could make it work and when it gets revenue to the town, we'd certainly do it. But we don't want, if the density that's required, we don't know the answer, if the density is required is beyond what the developer wants to build, we won't do it. It's an option. But that's what we were talking about. Any other kind of last minute questions? I want to turn it over to Walter just to wrap it up because we're going to do more. This is just the beginning.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, Jim introduced me earlier. My name is Walter Byron. I'm a longtime resident of the town. I live up on Fruit Street, part of the Economic Development Committee. I just want to touch on the next steps. The first one of which is to apply for the state grant for the bridge. That application is being prepared now and will be filed in August. If we are fortunate enough to have an award, the award will be granted in October, and the bridge construction must begin within 9 months of the award. And so if we are fortunate enough to get the award, we can expect to see construction occur sometime next year, begin anyway sometime next year. I don't know what the exact timetable to complete the bridge would be, but probably would take a year or so to finish it off. So that's the first thing in terms of next steps. Secondly, we would like to expand the inputs we've received this evening, and so we're thinking of conducting a survey of town citizens to get further input on this idea, which was initiated back there at town meeting in the spring. And the third thing we will do between now and fall town meeting is think through those zoning issues and look at any changes that are required, and if there are some required, bring those forward as zoning change articles on the warrant at town meeting. So those are 3 next steps, and there will probably be many more by the time we take the next step at fall town meeting. Thank you. Any last questions, and we'll wrap it up.
You know, if you think of
Thanks a
more,
lot.
I think most of you know me, I'm in the phone book. Don't hesitate to call. I'd be glad to. If you'd like, if in your neighborhoods you'd like to get some folks together, all I require is coffee. If you would like, I'd be more than happy to come over and visit with your neighbors and talk about this in more depth. I'm sure that Bob would do the same, Walter would do the same. We'd welcome that. So really, I extend that opportunity. If you get a group of people, just give us a call and we'll come visit, and no subject off limits.
Put a link on Norfolk Net to that video so more people can see it, because I had to really dig
This will be
for it.
shown on NCTV. We're being taped for NCTV as we speak.
I know that, but I think
The
that
video has been played on
was-
Norfolk Cable.
But can you put the link into, not this meeting, but the link of that 3-minute video? Is there a way for people to click on that on Norfolk Net, or do you not want to?
I'm a bad one to ask about Norfolk Net, so I will defer to someone else if they'd like to do that. I find too many things there that
I
are
agree
totally
with you.
untrue
It's just that- yeah.
and serve too many agendas that just are counterproductive to the community.
All
So
right, I just
I
thought
won't
it's a pretty
touch Norfolk Net.
impressive video when you see, and I don't know.
On the town website.
It'll be on the town website. I think it is already. I think
It's
yeah,
on
it's
the
on the
Norfolk
town
Cable.
website.
I did find it.
It's on the
You
Norfolk
click on it,
Cable.
Go to the drop-down, hit government,
Yeah.
then you find, so it just.
I think we're going to keep it there. Now, some citizen may find some wonderful way to connect that and do it, and that's okay.
It's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And if you do run into a gentleman named Niels Norgan who's around town all the time, give him a hug and a thank you, because he really was incredible in building that. He did a great job. So, well, thank you. It's nice to see some folks here tonight, so we thank you very much for joining us.